Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in wa ba'd. So inshallah, in this recording, inshallah, today I'm just going to speak briefly about getting started in nahu, because this is obviously something that quite a few people have asked me either in person or through messages, and it's something that I guess it needs to be elaborated upon. And inshallah, obviously, as we're going through the lessons of seeking knowledge, the Seeking Knowledge book, which is the Believer's Handbook for Seeking Knowledge, I kind of detailed that plan, but it's for a lot of people to hear it is a lot different than actually reading it, because I can add more detail when speaking that I can't really do when I'm writing something, especially when I'm writing something that's very abridged, and I'm trying to keep it brief. But as far as getting started in nahu, I mean, the first prerequisite for everybody is that they have to have a functioning knowledge in the Arabic language. There's no possible way that you can get started in nahu without that functional knowledge in the Arabic language. So if a person is not able to converse basic ideas, understand basic, just be able to like sit down and read. I mean, obviously, I'm not talking about like reading books like Sheikh Al-Islam and Mutammimah, but just real basic books in the Arabic language, like explanation of Al-Usul al-Thalatha, explanation of Kitab al-Tawheed, and to be able to sit down and understand what's going on. Sit down and listen to lessons on the same subject matter and understand what's going on. That person has to be at that type of level to get started in a nahu. Because the Arabs, obviously, when they started studying nahu, they speak and understand and read and write Arabic. So for a person to come in and start to understand all of these grammatical terms without actually having examples in the person's in your mind, I mean, it's going to be a failed attempt. And it's not going to progress your knowledge of the Arabic language any further. And I have seen brothers who could break down rules in nahu, but they couldn't even hold a basic conversation in the Arabic language. So it's honestly, I would rather be able to read, write, and understand the language without having a grasp on nahu than to understand nahu and not be able to do those things. So having that functional understanding, functional ability in the language is the prerequisite, and it's the most important thing. You don't teach nahu to people who don't speak and understand Arabic. Speak, read, and understand Arabic. It's a lost cause, and you have to break down all the terminologies in English. So it's pointless. It's like going and teaching usul al-fiqh to people who can't even understand Arabic. Yeah, you could do it, but it's not highly beneficial. The main focus for people, if they don't understand the Arabic language, is to focus on the Arabic language. That is the prerequisite for everything in this deen. Everything. Knowledge of the Arabic language is a prerequisite for everything. So, and there's no way around it. So don't even try to make a way around it. So I mean, that's not just specifically for nahu, that's for everything. So the person needs to sit down and get a functional understanding of the language. And, like I said, it's not important that he becomes, to the point where he's like memorizing poetry and reciting poetry. No, but at least be able to function. And obviously, the first thing that the person is going to start with is going to be Al-Ajurrumiyyah. That's what everybody has started with before, and that's not going to change. I don't perceive a change in that curriculum anytime in the near future. The person has to memorize Al-Ajurrumiyyah. If you do not have the discipline to sit down and memorize Al-Ajurrumiyyah in the beginning, then obviously seeking knowledge is not for you. It's advisable to go find some other way to benefit the Muslims. But knowledge is just not for you if you don't have the patience to sit down and memorize a matan that takes 13 minutes to read. And it's very concise, it's very to the point, very basic matan and nahu. And it doesn't get more basic than that, than Al-Ajurrumiyyah. And the person has a choice. He can memorize the matan of Al-Ajurrumiyyah, or he can memorize the nadhm, which is basically some individuals have taken Al-Ajurrumiyyah and wrote it in poetry form. Whatever the person deems as being easier. The best one that was written in poetry form is by one of the Shanaqita, is from the people from Shanqit, which is from Mauritania. The one that's memorized by Al-Amriti, nobody. And the one that's written by Al-Amriti, the Nazm, nobody memorizes. No, I don't know anybody that memorizes that. Nobody. It was a nice attempt, and Al-Amriti, he did a very good job when he did the Nazm of Al-Waraqat. He did a very good job with that one. Very good job. But as far as his Nazm with the Al-Ajurrumiyyah, it was a failed attempt. I mean, it was a good one, but it failed. He fell short of the mark. And Al-Ajurrumiyyah is much more beneficial. Whereas like his matan of Al-Waraqat, his Nazm of Al-Waraqat is perfect. It's perfect. Like, he doesn't take anything from the everything. It's just mashallah. It's you could compare the Nazm of Al-Waraqat to Al-Amriti to like Khasb al-Sukr from Sanani, and what he did with Nukhbat al-Fikr, Al-Hafidh ibn Hajar. So the way that he took the Nukhbat al-Fikr and he put it into poetry form without changing nothing. He didn't change anything. It's beautiful. But as far as his Nazm of Al-Ajurrumiyyah, nah, I don't know anybody that's memorized that. I don't know anybody that even tried to memorize it. And everybody that I knew when I first started seeking knowledge, everybody told me, don't memorize it. Just memorize Al-Ajurrumiyyah. Everybody told me that. That was like a consensus amongst the students of knowledge at that time. So I would not advise that. If you can find the one by Shanqiti, I don't know his full name. I didn't memorize it because I didn't find out about this one until much later. But this is the one that they memorize in Mauritania. Didn't memorize that. I mean, I've read it. I've had it, and I've read it a few times. And I was even considering memorizing it at one point. But I'd already memorized Al-Ajurrumiyyah, so I was like, what's the point? You know, why would I memorize the same method twice? But yeah, you have to memorize one of those two at least. There's no, you know, that's it. Everybody goes through the same thing. Anybody that starts with nahu, that's where they start. And obviously, you sit down with a good teacher. If you're from the West, it's better to have, in the beginning, it's better to have a teacher who's from the West to sit down and break down all the issues that he knows that you're going to have a problem with. So if you have a teacher from the West, it was like, if you're, I mean, when I say West, it's a very broad term, right? Because obviously we have English speakers, we have French speakers, we have Spanish speakers, well, whatever language you speak, and, you know, whoever you can find from the country that you're from who has sat down and studied these books and understood these books, and that person can sit down and teach you, and that's the person that you want to study with in the beginning. Because the Arabs are not gonna, they did not face the problems that you face. Everybody faces difficulties in nahu. Everybody. Illa man rahima rabbi. You know, some people they just get it. But everybody's gonna face difficulties somewhere along the line and something. It's gonna be some chapter. It doesn't matter who you are, how smart you are. There's just gonna be chapters in nahu that's gonna bust your head open. And that's it. And so you're going to have to focus all your attention on trying to understand certain things. Everybody goes through this, Arabs and non-Arabs. But the struggles that non-Arabs go through are different and a lot more complex than the struggles that the Arabs go through. So the Arabs, they go through the fact that they've been speaking wrong their whole lives, and now studying nahu and trying to correct their speech is very difficult for them, because all of those mistakes have become like etched in stone in their minds, and it's very hard for them to break those habits. For the non-Arabs, it's just an issue of like, one, we just don't have, when we start studying like Al-Ajurrumiyyah, we might not be at a very high level of Arabic understanding. So that's one issue. We make a lot of mistakes, but our mistakes have not been fossilized, you know, so we still can correct them. But we have a lot more mistakes, obviously, than others, because we're still learning the language. So it's better to study Al-Ajurrumiyyah with somebody who can feel your pain, so to speak, in the beginning. And once you get an understanding, then you can go off and find, you know, another teacher from amongst the Arab, or even the non-Arab. It doesn't have to be Arab. It could be Somali, it could be Indonesian, whoever has mastered that science that you want to sit down with and really, really study it with that person, and then whoever, it doesn't matter. But in the beginning, it's better to study with somebody from somebody that speaks your language and understands the problems that you're going to be facing, because it is nahu is very difficult in the beginning. But as you start to get an understanding of it, it starts to get a lot easier, a lot more fun. And, but it takes a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience, effort, memorization, struggling through difficulties. So, and then this is going to set the stage for you as you go off into all the different sciences. So if you get weak and you start to quit in nahu, then what are you going to do now when you start to face difficulties in usul al-fiqh, or difficulties trying to understand the issue in fiqh, or difficulties trying to find a correct statement in regards to a hadith that you're looking up? What are you going to do? I mean, so learning nahu and struggling through all the difficulties that you have to struggle through, not just nahu, but just learning the Arabic language, because it doesn't stop with nahu. As Westerners, we're going to struggle through every single thing that we have to do. So we struggle through learning the basic Arabic conversation, the pronunciation, and just that's a struggle. Then we have to learn the grammar, syntax, and try to put these words and everything together in correct sentences while still maintaining proper pronunciation. So there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of difficulties. And then now we got to focus on, when is this mansub and when is this marfu', and we're still focusing on pronunciation, still focusing on making sure that we get the right harakat on the words. So I mean, and then you start to study sarf. Then you start to read Arabic, classical Arabic poetry. So everything that we're going to do is going to be a struggle. And so this is going to set the tables for you. And this is going to be your first real struggle, because as you're learning the Arabic language, especially in ta'bir, it's very fun. There's a lot of enjoyment. There's a lot of discovery going on, and you're getting new words. But when you get into nahu is when you start to get tested. That's when you start to get tested, and that's when you start to start to feel the headaches, start to feel the stress, and you're trying to understand something, you just can't get it. And you're going to come across these things. And that's natural. That's normal. But it's something that you have to push through. You have to push through. And then, because it's not, I'm not going to say it's not going to get any easier, but I'm just saying those struggles are going to continue when you study fiqh, when you study usul al-fiqh, when you study mustalah hadith, when you study al-fara'id, all of these sciences, you're going to find these difficulties. So if you can master yourself and overcoming those difficulties in the beginning by sitting down, memorizing Al-Ajurrumiyyah completely, studying it with a person who's from the place where you're from, that can give you a good understanding. And because what you really need in the beginning is you need an understanding of the matan. But you also need somebody who's going to sit down with you and go through examples and give you a lot of practical application of the grammar. Write stuff on the board. You need a person who's going to be whiteboard friendly. It's not just going to be up on the whiteboard writing out examples, explaining it, because a lot of the things in nahu it has to be it's repetition, right? So the more you see it, the more you repeat it, the more it starts to stick. And once it sticks, it's good. You're good. So if you could sit down, for example, Al-Ajurrumiyyah as a Westerner. Now, normally Al-Ajurrumiyyah would only take a month to study. Just the matan, maybe a month, maybe less. And some people study it in 2 weeks, some people in 3 weeks. But if you're really trying to get it down, you need to sit down with somebody who's going to just really, really, he's not going to go past the chapter until he feels like you fully grasped it. If you're studying amongst like a small group of brothers, he's not going to pass that chapter until he sees that everybody's got it. And he'll keep on putting up examples and keep going over the same chapter until you get it. And it could take 2 months, could take 6 months, could take a year. Who cares? The time is not, because that time is going to pass regardless, but at least that time is passing in a manner of you benefiting and understanding it. Because some people, they sit there, and I've seen people study Al-Ajurrumiyyah and Tuhfat al-Saniyah so many times, and in fact, I mean, forget Tuhfat al-Saniyah. I've seen people study Medina Book 2 for like 3 years. So I just keep trying to go over it, Medina Book 2 or Medina Book 3. and then still doing the same thing 3 years later. So to sit down and dedicate an entire year to really understand, and you have to, and dedicate it to that science alone, where you're gonna, like, you might read books and other things, but the main thing is that you're focusing on trying to understand this, because once you get Al-Ajurrumiyyah, that's it. You move on. You can move on. But if you get it in a way where you can actually take all the information and apply it the way that it's supposed to be applied, which is the most important thing, because the whole thing that we're studying in a nahu is al-i'rab. If you come out of al-Ajurrumiyyah and you can't even do the i'rab of the most basic sentences, well, you failed. And you're going to have to go back and study it again and study it again and study it again. So a lot of the teachers, they just break down the rules and they teach the rules, but they don't really get down to practice. And the only way that you're going to get that type of studying is with a teacher that's maybe got a small group of students and he can do that, where he has access to a whiteboard and he's ready to write things down and ready to be patient with the students until they get it. Because that is the most important thing, like actually understanding al-i'rab, because that's the practicality, that's the practical application. That's the application of the science. I mean, all this memorizing, you can memorize the whole entire explanation of Al-Ajurrumiyyah, but that doesn't mean that you can apply it. So one time, the first time that I sat down with this one sheikh from Mauritania, and he was teaching me and another brother, Allah yarhamu, he died just recently. He was teaching us Al-Ajurrumiyyah, and that's what he told us. He said, I've noticed that the majority of the students in Yemen, like they know nahu, like they can recite the rules and they got the method memorized, but when it comes to time to actual application, they can't do it. So this was his observation. So he said that whenever he's going to teach us, he said we're going to focus on being able to apply it. You know, the same thing when I studied with another brother, Sha'lan, which is one of the students of Sheikh Muqbil. He actually studied Ibn Aqil with Sheikh Muqbil, Allah yarhamu. And when I studied with him, he did the same thing. Everything was practical. Everything was like every line of poetry that we passed by, everything. He said, Arab, you know, do the i'rab of this one and this one. And so he made us all, and everybody had to do it. You know, we had a class, it was 4 of us in the class, and we all got picked on equally. It would go in a circle, and each person gets his go, and then it starts back at the beginning. So by the time that the class finishes, everybody has been picked on, and everybody's had to lower their head in shame throughout the class, you know. But you come back the next day and you keep it going, and over time it starts to get easier. You start to pick it up. It starts to click, and then that's when it becomes fun, and that's when it becomes addictive, because then you know what I'm saying, you want more. You can't stop. Like you don't see limitations anymore. So Al-Ajurrumiyyah is the very first thing, and sitting down with a teacher who gives you that type of practice, and also getting a book that focuses on the actual tatbiq, the application of the nahu. So there's a book written by this sister. Her name is Kamila Al-Qawari, and she wrote a book. It's called I think it's called a tatbiq al-Arabi or something, tatbiq al-Arabi or something of that nature, right? I don't have the book in front of me right now, so I have to go get it to see the name of it. But she did that. She went and put this book, because she had her own book of nahu, and she put this book of a tatbiq with this book that she wrote to give the i'rab of all the examples in the book. But alhamdulillah, I mean, you have all the books now. You see, there's a lot of tatbiq, whereas in the past we didn't have access to a lot of this stuff. So all of the tahqiqat of Ibn Aqil, you got the one by Muhammad Muhyiddin. The tahqiq of Ibn Aqil has also got he does all the i'rab of the shawahid al-shi'riyah, and then you have other books where they do the i'rab of the shawahid from the Quran. You have Sheikh Abu Bilal al-Hadrami. He did his tahqiq of the sharh of Qatar al-Nada Ibn Hisham. Also did the same thing. Muhammad Muhyiddin also has a tahqiq of Qatar al-Nada. So you have these different books, but this is when you get more advanced. But you need to start getting at least the basic stuff, like all the examples that you see in Al-Ajurrumiyyah. You should be able to take a basic sentence and do the i'rab. Not the more complex sentences, but at least the basic stuff. The basic stuff, like every single thing that you see in Al-Ajurrumiyyah, you should be able to do the i'rab of that, you know. And then you move on. Once you get finished with Al-Ajurrumiyyah, you sat down, you've gone through the application, you really got an understanding. The very next book that you need to go to is Mutammimah, as Al-Mutammimah, which is Mutammimah Al-Ajurrumiyyah, which is written by Al-Hattab. Is basically, he wrote it like it's almost like an explanation of Al-Ajurrumiyyah, but what it is like he said, it's a Mutammimah. Mutammimah, it means it's a completion. So all the things that Sahib Al-Ajurrumiyyah left out, Al-Hattab, he put it back. He put it into this metin, and basically expanded it. He took from Qatar al-Nada. He took from Alfiyat ibn Malik. He took from different books to produce this book as a bridge to get the people to understanding Qatar al-Nada, because it's a big leap. If you were to jump from Al-Ajurrumiyyah to Alfiyah or Al-Ajurrumiyyah to Qatar al-Nada, it is a huge leap, and anybody that has attempted this before will attest to this, because you're going from a basic book in nahu to books that are dealing with all this ikhtilaf, all the differing amongst the scholars of nahu, and this is what a Sibawi said, and so this is like you have to have some type of bridge, and Al-Mutammimah is that bridge. Whether or not the person memorizes Al-Mutammimah is up to them. It's very memorizable. Very memorizable. I memorized a lot of chapters from it. I haven't memorized the whole thing, but I had the intentions at one point to memorize the whole metin. But what I did is I took out all the chapters that I was having problems with, that I was having difficulties with, and I would memorize that chapter in Al-Mutammimah, and then I would sit down and go through the explanations and try to understand it, and khalas. And that made my life a lot easier when I was studying with Qa'id al-Sha'lan, when we were doing Ibn Aqil. So this was a major thing that assisted me a lot. If I had the opportunity, I mean, obviously I would never have the opportunity to go back and do it all over again. But if I did, if that was ever possible, which it never would be, I would definitely put more emphasis on Mutammimah and try to memorize the whole entire book. And inshallah, I'll still go back and try to memorize the chapters that I didn't finish, that I didn't memorize, because like I said, I only memorized the stuff that I was having problems with. But it's very memorizable. You can read the entire book. It takes about less than 100 minutes to read the entire metin. So it's what I used to do is I used to break it up into 5 days. I would just read 20 minutes. So there was like at one point I was reading it every 5 days for months straight, and that was when I was memorizing those chapters. But like I said, I've read it enough to where if I went back and started memorizing all the chapter, I could do that because of just reading it so much. So inshallah, hopefully one day when I get the time, me and my son get finished with Bulugh al-Maram, inshallah, then I'll go back and I'll sit down with him and go through Mutammimah. We'll memorize it together, inshallah. But it is very possible. Whether or not a person wants to do that, it's not the custom of people to memorize Al-Mutammimah, because obviously the popular thing to do is Alfiyah. But we're not concerned with popularity, and we're not concerned with like, okay, this is the cool book. This is if you go and you say, oh, I memorized Alfiyah, people are like, wow. If you say, oh, I memorized Mutammimah, they're like, huh? So it's like, it's not going to win you any brownie points with people, but who cares? That's not what we're after anyways. We're after benefit. So we want to focus on the books that help us to gather an understanding. So you read through it, you study it. I mean, you should definitely study Mutammimah, and at the very least do the same thing that I did in the past, which is take out the chapters that you're having issues with and memorize them. Because the way that he does it in Mutammimah, it just opens the doors to every book that comes after it. Whereas if you look at if you study Al-Ajurrumiyyah, the only thing that you'll be able to do with like Alfiyah is like look at Alfiyah through like the peephole in the door. Like it gives you like a little crack in the door to where you can see something from Alfiyah. But when you study Mutammimah, it just opens the door. It just completely opens the door, and then and you're ready to go. Like I'm not saying it's gonna be easy, but it will. You'll have a lot less difficulties after you finish Mutammimah, because you've gone through all those difficulties while you were studying Mutammimah. So while you were doing Al-Mutammimah, you've gone through all those difficulties. You've ironed out all the wrinkles that you have in nahu, and now you're ready to proceed to the bigger book. So I mean, that's the best way to get started. You get started with Al-Ajurrumiyyah. You sit down with a teacher who's going to go through the book and give you all the practical application, everything that you need to understand. So when you finish studying the book, you're able to do the Arab of all the basic sentences, all the basic principles that you studied in the book. Then you go on to Al-Mutammimah, and then you continue to do the same thing, because once you're able to get finished with Mutammimah and you can also apply it, then you're good. I mean, if you wanted to stop right there, it would be sufficient for you. It would be, if you really had a good understanding of Mutammimah and you memorized it and you really understood it fully and you can apply it. Yeah, that's really, if you're sufficient for you, and you would have achieved more than 99% of the Muslims in Arabic grammar. So so it's not a small feat. So it should not be. It's not something to be downplayed. I definitely encourage the memorization of Mutammimah. I mean, I have it sitting right here in front of me. It's always around me. I have about 9-10 copies of it in my house right now. So I always keep copies of this around me because I know the importance of this book. And I used to always look down on it, but once I really read through it and understood it, and I saw how much it helped me to understand Ibn Aqil, I will never, ever, ever look down on this book again. So I do encourage people to memorize it. And if you're not going to memorize it, at least memorize the chapters that you're having problems with, at the very least. And then khalas, after that, it's all systems go. You can go wherever you want. You want to go to Ibn Aqil, you want to go to Khatar al-Nada, you want to go wherever. Obviously, like Mughni Labib is going to be something different. By the time you finish something like Ibn Aqil, if you finish it with a good teacher and you've gone through that, then you could pretty much just sit back and just read. Just read all the other books, inshallah. I mean, that should be very sufficient for you. But like I said, even if you stopped after Mutammimah, after a good understanding, you'll be all right, inshallah. But I think that will wrap it up for today, inshallah. And Allah knows best. Wa subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk.